I was calling Julie because she was going to pick up her daughter, Layla, that morning from George's house. George de la Cruz is Layla's father, and at the time they were sharing custody of Layla because they were going through a divorce. Julie was working as a pharmacy tech, and at that time she was off, but she wouldn't answer her phone, and it was not like her at all to just disappear.
I became concerned after we had been trying all day to get in touch with her, and she was nowhere to be found. She hadn't reached out to myself, to my sister, to my mom, to my son. Nobody had heard from her all day.
And then finally, we received a text from her phone saying that she had to get away for a few days. Posts started to show up on her MySpace account, which we thought was odd. I called George to see if he had heard from her, and he told me that Julie showed up at his house on March 26, 2010. He said that she was a little out of it and that she had to go out of town for a few days, leaving Layla behind. It wasn't like Julie to just drop everything and step away from her life. So we immediately called the police. Julie and George met in high school. Julie was 17 and George was 18. And they married when she was 21 and he was 22. Once they became parents, Julie's goals that she had set for herself didn't change. She was now a college student, and she was working at the Walgreens as a pharmacy tech. But George didn't have any ambition.
George was constantly playing video games, not taking care of the baby. Julie was very frustrated, and it caused a lot of problems between them. She was ready to get past that part of her life and move on. Shortly after Julie separated from George, Julie and Aaron started dating.
Julie and Aaron had been dating only a few months, but Julie was very happy with Aaron. She was looking forward to a future with Aaron. I felt that George knew more than what he was telling us.
So we went to confront George. George met us at the door with his mother and with Layla in his arms. And they invited us in, and we sat down. And we said, George, what happened to Julie? And he said, when she came by to pick up Layla, she seemed very odd. And I said, what do you mean? He said, she just looked real frustrated, and she said she needed to get away for a few days, so she asked me to keep Layla for a few more days. And I said, George, you're full of I said, you're a liar. I said, there is no way that you're telling me that Julie came to you, asked you for help, and asked you to watch Layla? His mother says, don't talk to my son. I said, I will talk to your son as I choose. This is serious. And he was the last person to see her. I said, he knows something.
Looking into Julie's bank statements, we found that a transaction had been made the day of her disappearance in the afternoon at a local Walmart. The video footage showed not Julie, but George pushing Layla, Julie and George's 2-year-old daughter. The receipt of the purchase showed several items that were purchased with Julie's debit card. There was a DVD, some bathroom items for a child, but there was also a game card for Xbox.
It appeared that George used Julianne's debit card to purchase games. That was the turning point in this case, because if Julianne really wanted to disappear and take a break, she would take her debit card.
We didn't find the game card that had been purchased with Julie's debit card. However, its serial number, it was on the receipt. And we were able to determine that George's Xbox was used to initiate that particular game card.
The detective secured Julie's MySpace information and discovered that whoever was making those postings was actually using the same IP address as George was on his Xbox. But also the account information supplied showed his gaming activity and the frequency. George was an excessive gamer to where he would game 18 plus hours a day, almost day in and day out. But on the day that Julie goes missing, there's over a 20-hour absence between gaming sessions, which was unique and never happened in the records previously. It goes to the habits and patterns of activity. Something changed in George's life, except on the day that Julie goes missing.
Every day was pretty much consistent except for the day that Julie disappeared.
That would be a significant smoking gun, and specifically when the activity abnormalities that occurred happened on the day that Julie went missing.
We were incredibly confident that we had the right person. We were incredibly confident that George had caused Julianne's disappearance and that he murdered her.
Family members of Julianne Gonzalez have waited 5 years to learn what happened to her. They hope the trial brings closure.
Whenever I saw George in the courtroom, I wanted to just go to him and shake him and just tell him to spit it out. Just tell us what happened. What did he do with Julie? Where is she? I was nervous because there wasn't any DNA physical evidence, and there was only technological evidence.
This case is incredibly unusual. Typically in a murder case, people expect to hear from a coroner in regards to the autopsy and the results of that autopsy, how a person was murdered. But we did not have a body to examine. There was no fingerprints, there was no DNA, there was no ballistics, there was no scientific evidence.
The family of Julianne Gonzalez prays the rosary as a jury deliberates the fate of George de la Cruz. The 27-year-old faces up to life in prison if convicted.
Sitting in that courtroom waiting for the verdict, I just was looking around and thinking, this is a nightmare. When am I going to wake up from this?
I was just praying that Julie would get justice.
A jury today convicts an Austin man of murdering his wife despite not having a body.
We, the jury, find the defendant, George de la Cruz, guilty of the offense of murder.
When the verdict came back guilty, I threw my hands up in the air. And I said, thank God, now we're going to find out what happened to Julie. I even asked the prosecutors to please just give him a lighter sentence so he could tell us what happened to Julianne. He was not what was important to me. My mission was just to find Julie. But George never said anything. To this day, he hasn't said anything.
God, she looks so much alike in her baby pictures with Julie.
She does look like Julie. Layla was 2 whenever Julie disappeared. And now she's 15.
Life is tough for Layla. Her teen years are her toughest years. She knows very little of her mother.
It's bittersweet to see Julie and Layla looking so much alike because we want Julie here. And I wish Layla knew how much she is like her mom. We don't push too much on Layla because it's just traumatic for her. She lost not only her mother, but her father as well.